2 young people voting for the first time. Here are some tactics used to control you. A. Propaganda. B. Wedge issues. C. Identity politics. D. Fear and shame. And anger. Anger. And E. Virtue signaling. So if you intimately acquaint yourself with these terms, you'll have an easier time finding your truth. So let's go through these one by one. For the young people voting for the first time. So if someone was telling me about this the other day. They said about 4 million people, at least 4 million people that weren't old enough to vote in 2016 in the United States elections will be old enough to vote in 2020. So I'm not saying that young people are more impressionable, but young people are more impressionable. I'm sorry, guys. I'm 35 years old. I remember being 18, 19. It was a bit different back then, admittedly. We didn't have the internet the way we do now. We did have it, but it wasn't ubiquitous. Twitter, Facebook, social media wasn't as big. It wasn't even around when I was your age. If you're 16 or 18 watching this, we didn't have that until about 2007, 2008. And things were just much different. Like we had forums. We had, I think Reddit was pretty early on. We had message boards. We had, CompuServe and AOL. They had places you could hang out. But nobody was, I don't remember, growing up and seeing a lot of people talking about politics like everywhere. It wasn't like, everything is politics. Nowadays, you'll hear people say, everything is politics. It's in our TV shows. It's in our comic books. It's on Netflix. It's on Twitter. It's everywhere. It's at award shows. Wasn't that ubiquitous back then? Like the culture, the paradigm now has changed a little bit. It's a little bit different. So the first thing you have to look out for, tactics used to control you, propaganda. And this is for the left and the right. I mean, this isn't a partisan issue. People are putting out information to persuade you to their side. It's as simple as that. And the news organizations, the ones you trust, the bigger ones, and the smaller ones, and the mollusk media, the independents, everybody has an agenda. Like I said, I do have my political positions, my philosophical positions, but I try to keep as much of an open dialogue going as possible. I don't want to get people bogged down. Like obviously I have a message. Obviously I do. And I think transparency is key with this, And what you're not seeing when you look at Fox News or CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, any of these major outlets, New York Times, Washington Post, Washington Times, all these places, you're not really getting explicitly where their biases lie. Now, if you study politics, the people watching this video that, hang around the political realm all the time are like, come on, Jeff, stop being strangely sanctimonious and weird. We know that the New York Times is really left-wing and Fox News is really right-wing. Well, hey, maybe this video isn't for you. But stick around. You may find something you like. So, propaganda's out there. These news media companies, they are working many times, as WikiLeaks showed, hand in hand with the Democrat and Republican parties. It's not as simple as just, they're neutral. We're fair and balanced. No, you're not, Fox. You work directly with Trump, directly with the RNC. You're not fair and balanced. CNN, we are arbiters of the truth. What is their slogan? Somebody tell me their slogan in the comments section below. But they act like they're neutral. Well, we're the neutral. Our brand is neutral. We listen to every side. And I go, yeah, and then you condescend to them on air. When you had the Libertarian and Green parties on in 2016, you had Jill Stein and Gary Johnson. Well, Gary Johnson is pretty easy to make fun of and pretty easy to condescend to. Of course, usually he's high. Yeah, makes it a little bit easier, doesn't it? But, they pretend to be fair and balanced and neutral. But if you look at their actual coverage, if you look carefully and analyze how they frame things in their news articles, in their news stories, the terms they use, the way that they try to mind read and they try to paint people a certain way. Oh, Trump was angered by this. Oh, this person here was angered by that. Oh, they're trying to assign emotions to people. And to you, and to me. They're trying to make us feel a certain thing. May it be doubt, fear, anger, any of these things. They're trying to do that, and they're doing it through propaganda. Okay? They're spreading post-truth information. They're spreading things that are only on one side sometimes. That's one way you can actually tell. Scott Adams has talked about this. One way you can tell if news is fake news is if only one side reports it. Like if you only hear it on the right or the left, yeah, there's a good chance that it's partisan bullshit. Especially if they have anonymous sources. Anonymous sources say this. Something really hard to believe. Anonymous sources say that. You know what doesn't have anonymous sources? WikiLeaks. And to some degree, Project Veritas and other investigative journalists. Disobedient media, okay? Adam Carter. These people they have sources. They have places where information came from, people that weren't afraid, okay? Now, not every single Project Veritas source is, known or transparent. Like they had Eric Cochran from Pinterest that talked about how they were biasing search results against conservatives and against pro-lifers. Of course, I'm pro-choice, but I do think that the pro-life message holds a ton of merit, and it is the pro-science position on abortion. So I think it's important that we actually we allow that information to be out there. Like I said, knowledge is power. I'm pro-information. Even if I disagree with your conclusions, even if I think it's wrong, I think free speech. Free speech, okay? And let people come to their own conclusions. That's the best way forward. It's not perfect, but it's the best we have. But then Project Veritas, they also had another guy, the Google leaker, that said, I don't want my identity to be known because I'll never get to work again. I'll never get to give you any more information. Like, it's better than I'm anonymous. And here are some verified documents. Here are some things from within Google. So he actually gave some things that backed up his story, that gave him credibility. So him being anonymous wasn't ideal, of course. It would be better if we knew exactly who was providing the information. But it's just like WikiLeaks. Like, we don't know exactly who hacked or leaked from the DNC or got into Podesta's emails. If you read the Mueller report, you might, say, oh, well, if you listen to CrowdStrike, you might get one side of the story. They'll say, oh, it was Russia, who also helped President Trump get elected. No collusion, no obstruction. That's in the Mueller report. But of course, as Scott Adams also says, there are two movies on one screen. Two people can look at one document and see two different things. Okay? But, both sides of the political spectrum were saying back in 2016 that this story doesn't make any sense. There's not enough evidence. And we know about evidence, innocent until proven guilty with evidence. And Russiagate never provided that. But it's a fun investigation to go on. Join Bob Mueller in the Manafort investigation. You too can be a detective and get President Trump impeached which of course will drop everyone's 401ks, but hey, who cares? Because Orange Man bad. Orange Man bad. That's all I care about. I don't care about the cost-benefit analysis of getting rid of them. I don't care about anything else. I just care about emotions. Orange Man bad. Orange Man bad. So you'll have wedge issues. Now these are becoming less and less important. And it is a hot day, so you'll see some sweat on me here. Definitely the middle of July 2019. It's a couple of days after July 4th, so I'm definitely melting a little bit. But we will soldier on and we'll deliver whatever this is. So wedge issues. These are things that are controversial, that about half the people, give or take, might disagree on. For example, abortion. Here's an issue where most people, even a lot of conservatives, agree that limited abortions should be allowed. Pragmatically, it should be allowed. There are different arguments. I don't really want to get into the abortion discussion during the course of this video today because it's complex. It deserves its own video. And there's also the possibility that maybe as a male I should not, I believe I am entitled to my opinion, but it may lower the credibility of the female voice if men are talking about the issue. Really, women should decide. Women should have the loudest voice by a very large margin, if not the full thing. Obviously, when it comes to finances and so on and so forth, fathers should be involved in the decision-making process, but at the end of the day, it is a woman's body. It is a woman's choice, in my opinion. So I'm not sure if I want to talk about that, but that is a wedge issue. That's something that drives a wedge in between two groups of people, pro-life, pro-choice. And they go, well, this is something that if we don't watch out, the other side is going to take this thing away. You don't want them to take it away, right? If you vote for the Republican, you're going to lose your abortion rights, your reproductive rights, and it is a healthcare issue and all these things. And then, of course, in the case of guns, guns are a wedge issue. They drive a wedge between people. You have the Republicans. The Republicans are saying, we want guns, Second Amendment. And I agree with that. I'm a Second Amendment absolutist, virtually. I don't believe in gun control. And that includes rolling back the bump stock ban. So that's my opinion. But they'll say, you can't get rid of our Second Amendment. And then the Republicans, the propagandists in the Republican side, they'll say, well, if you vote for the Democrats, they're going to get rid of your Second Amendment. And, they'll probably do something in terms of gun control. They've talked about it. They've ran on it. Their rhetoric has involved it quite a bit. So there's some veracity probably to that claim. But it does drive a wedge between people. And it tells you, well, you better not vote for the wrong side because you're going to lose on that one issue, that very important issue. And there are a lot of one-issue voters out there that only worry about just one or two things. Marijuana, wedge issue. Do you want your marijuana? Now I think that this is becoming a bipartisan thing. They're seeing the benefits of cannabis, of marijuana. They're thinking about maybe taking it off of Schedule I, regulating it, doing some good things with it. But for a long time, it was like, if you're on the left, you're for it. If you're a conservative Christian on the right, you're against it. So you better vote for the left if you want marijuana. There's another wedge issue. And so they're going to use a singular issue, and anybody that considers himself a one-issue voter can be easily controlled by a wedge issue. It's just the way it is. It's just the way that mechanism works. If all you care about is war, well, you're probably screwed in this country. War isn't really a wedge issue. It's something that would become accustomed to just interventionism. Although President Trump is doing a pretty good job of generally easing up on that, being a little bit more of a dove. But with people like John Bolton there advising him, he could become a hawk at any moment. Now, I don't really believe that. I think that Trump likes the optics of having John Bolton, a well-known warmongering hawk. He's scary. He's somebody there in the room that can give you the extreme, absolute, pro-war position. And then you have doves in the room as well that can give you the anti-war position. And then Trump, looking at both sides, comes in and says, well, the truth lies somewhere in between. I'm going to make a decision based on both sides. I'm not going to just take a partisan position of pro-war or anti-war, but I'm going to take a pragmatic, nuanced position on this. So that's wedge issues. There's plenty more. There's plenty more wedge issues. Anything that seems like that you could be a one-issue voter about. I'm trying to think of another one really quickly, but if you know any good wedge issues, place them in the comments section below. So, now, regarding wedge, we also have identity politics, which in some cases, in some contexts, is referred to by me as the modern religion of social justice, intersectionality, social or cultural Marxism, really collectivism. This is putting people into groups, not viewing them for their individual character, and notably not viewing them as Americans first, but viewing them by, say, their class, their race, their sex, their gender, their religion. All these different things. Some of their characteristics immutable, some not immutable, but this is placing them into large groups and then trying to divide people up by those groups. Now, this is best known, probably best known with the Southern strategy in the 1960s, putting working class whites against blacks, largely in the South, where they wanted to make it seem to the whites that the blacks were a threat to their prosperity and so forth, and so they used this racism, and that's what identity politics truly is. It is racism, it is otherism, it is sexism. It's all those things, regardless of how somebody might want to frame it and say, well, Jeff, all politics is identity politics. You're doing this because of your identity. No. I'm viewing you by your character, your merit, your flaws. I'm not looking at you by your color skin or your religion or your sex or your gender. I'm saying, if I were running for president, I'd say, are you an American? Do you have American values? Are you somebody that came over legally, a legal immigrant that wants to be an American, and anybody that I'm going to have as a constituent? I want you, Americans and prospective Americans. I don't want to be going, I want you, white people. I want you, Asian people, black people, Hispanics, Native Americans, anybody by their race or their ethnic background. I want you, men. I want you, women. I want you, trans and intersex people. I want you, adults. I want you, children. I wouldn't do that. I want everybody to vote for me. I wouldn't use identity politics. Now there are some ways, somebody could make an argument and say, well, that you are appealing to certain aspects of to certain classes. You're appealing to the working class. You're appealing to the business class. You're appealing to the rich. You're appealing to the poor. If you're a populist, you're appealing to the poor in the middle class. And if you're like a neoliberal or a neocon, you may be looking at the donor class and going, well, I want your vote, 1%. You business Democrats and, well, Republicans and so on and so forth, right? So there is this bit of identity that can't be erased from the discussion. At the end of the day, certain policies benefit certain groups more than others, but they will use identity politics to divide us up, to say that if you vote for a Democrat or if you vote for a Republican, whoever you vote for, it'll be a big problem, depending on which side that they're on, trying to persuade you to their side. They'll use your identity. They'll say, Well, you're a black female. In the intersectional world, that's double victim. Okay, now that's not how I view it, but this is how the modern religion of social justice breaks it down. Okay, you are being oppressed. You are a victim. That's what they think of you. They think that you're just helpless, that you don't have your own agency, your own character. It's not the truth. We all have our own individual agency. We all have our character, our merits, and our flaws. We are doing a good job or we're doing a bad job, but we are responsible. We are accountable for our actions and for our words. And identity politics puts that all aside and just says, well, you're in this group based on profession, religion, a mutable characteristic, whatever it might be, and they just say, that's it. You should vote for this side. But of course, the Republican Party right now isn't really focusing on identity politics because they realize that for this paradigm, the bubble burst on identity politics in 2016 when President Trump was elected. We could have had the first female president, and it would have been great, at least the female part, not the Hillary Clinton part, but that was the identity politics angle. Vote for me because I'm a woman. Don't look at my character. Don't look at my past. Don't look at my background. Don't look at what I've done. Don't look at how I've helped destroy Libya and bring on the migrant crisis in Europe and make the migrant crisis in America even worse. Don't think about those things. Just focus on my womanhood. That's identity politics. Okay. Now, I was a Bernie supporter back then. I'm going back and forth now. There's a good chance that I'll vote for President Trump. But I was a Bernie supporter back in 2016. And I was talking about ideology. I was talking about, he has this sort of quasi-socialistic program. And people were saying, no, identity politics. You need to vote because it's a woman. That's all that matters. I'd say, well, wait a second, hold on. What are her policies? I don't care what her policies are. She's a woman. All right? That's an old white male. That's all that matters. That's identity politics. Now, if you like identity politics, that's fine. I'm not casting judgment on disciples of the modern religion known as social justice, which of course seeks this sort of axiom of equity and equality, this moral virtue and universal truth, through otherism, altruistic racism, altruistic sexism, casting people by their group, oppressor, oppressed, and saying, well, you're the victim, you're the bully. I don't see that. I see character. I see merit and flaws. But who am I to judge? I am not a prophet, pope, or god of a modern religion. I'm actually a Richard Feynman agnostic. A Richard Feynman agnostic, meaning that I'm essentially atheistic, but I'm a little too polite to say so. And, really, I'm not sure if God exists. I'm not sure if this is a simulation. I can never be sure. So if I'm not sure, I sit on the fence. So they'll also use, if you're a young person voting for the first time, they'll use fear, anger, and shame. So they will rile up your emotions. They'll use very divisive news stories. They'll paint people as absolute villains. There'll be people all over social media saying, they'll be virtue signaling. They'll be morally crusading to say, how can you ever possibly vote for a woman like Kamala Harris that put all kinds of people in prison, all kinds of people of different color in prison for truancy and these tiny crimes? Is she supposed to be a beacon of social and criminal justice? Or they'll say, Trump, he's an otherist, orange man bad, concentration camps, Nazis, white fascists, alt-right fascists, white supremacists, white nationalists, Hitler, orange man Hitler. They'll use this sort of, fear. And they'll say, well, you can't vote for Joe Biden. He touches young girls. Shame, they'll say. Bernie Sanders, his wife had that issue with when she was working for the Vermont College. She laundered money or something. Look it up. I'm not sure what the exact story was, but there was some controversy. They'll say, how can you support somebody that does that to the college? They'll just try to moralize, and they'll try to bring you in and say, shame on you for having a different opinion. Or you listened to Jordan Peterson talk? You listened to Jimmy Dore? Phew, no way. They'll make you scared, they'll make you angry, and they'll fill you with shame and guilt. And they'll say, if you were a better person, you would vote the way that I want you to. Don't you know the world is going to end in 12 years? No, I know AOC didn't. She came out and said, that was just a joke. Yes, the modern religion of global warming is a joke, AOC. But that's a case of using fear to control you. Saying climate change, if you don't vote for the Democrats, you're promoting the end of the world. Shame on you. Shame on you. And then they make people look at the other side, the right. They look at the right, and the right's not going crazy over this. The right's not worried about climate change, global warming. The technology is there that is allowing us to do things like, pull carbon dioxide out of the air and clean our air, water, our oceans. There's all kinds of technology in the works and currently working now that's making the world a better place. Solar and wind are becoming more economical to use. They're becoming more efficient over time, although they're not there yet for a large scale. You have generation 3 and 4 nuclear, which eat nuclear waste for fuel and never melt down. So nuclear is not, if you watched Chernobyl and you're scared, if you've got the fear and the anger that people are advocating for nuclear, fear not. That was just propaganda. Back to A. So you'll see plenty of that fear, anger, and shame to use to control us, to make us slide into the right box and pull the right lever, press the right button, D or R, or whatever it might be. And of course, all of this comes with a healthy dose of virtue signaling. So people will go out there and they'll say, again, here is something that's more moral. I'm doing the virtuous thing. I am pointing out children in cages. They might be Obama-era detention facilities, but no, I'm seeing this problem. I'm seeing that we should think of the children and stop the concentration camps. The concentration camps. This is linguistic propaganda. Okay, this is twisting reality, twisting words, taking a frame from your memories, a frame from your education, from the distant past, 75, 80 years ago. If you go all the way back to FDR and the detention facilities, the concentration camps for Japanese Americans, they're bringing you all the way back to the 1940s. Or if you look at China, you look at how they're holding about 3 million Muslims. I forget the name of the group, but look it up. They're holding 3 million Muslims in concentration camps in China. They want to frame our border situation, this basic border detention, basic, maintaining the sovereignty, maintaining order on our border, maintaining our country, making sure that 125,000 people can't just rush the border, crash the border, slide under the border. Don't go to a port of entry. Don't legally try to immigrate, but illegally immigrate, become an illegal alien. I mean, these are all terms for the same thing. But they'll say they're all 125,000 are asylum seekers. They are refugees. Refugees. And I'll say, well, there's probably a couple of refugees in there. There's also a lot of child traffickers. There are women being raped on the way over. There are drug traffickers. There are gangs coming through. There's plenty of people coming through that are just going to go on to our welfare system. They're not going to become a productive member of our society. So why doesn't China or Russia or another country take these individuals on? Like, why is it the responsibility of the United States? They never have answers for that. No. The things I've learned in the immigration debate, people virtue signaling that there's infinite abundance and that we are only limited by the words we use to describe these things. So they'll say, nations are just a construct. Borders are just a construct. Sovereignty is just a construct. The welfare state? That's just a construct. Taxes? That's just a construct. They'll say all this different stuff. They'll just kind of move the goalposts around, and they think, like, their intentions are good. Their intentions are great. Don't get me wrong. In a world of infinite abundance, where I had a genie and I had a bottle and I rubbed the bottle and a genie came out and I said, I want world peace and I want every last person on this planet to have something, to have a home, to have shelter, to have food, to have happiness. If I could do that, I would do it like that. I'd snap my fingers and do it. But that's not the world we live in. We live in a world that's imperfect and that there's atrocities occurring every day. But that doesn't mean that we're going to allow our border, we're going to allow our border to be broken, our country to be invaded by anybody that comes here and can mouth the words asylum seeker. I'm sorry. If that makes me not very empathetic, I am sorry. I'd like to help people that are in need. But if we allow every single person that's in need to come here, to come in and to go on our system and for us to pay for them, well, we are not able to do that. Okay, we aren't able to save the world that way. Our country would not be a country for long. Okay, I hate to say that. Like, I would love to be able to provide and provide and provide, but the world is not one of infinite abundance. Resources have a limit. They have scarcity. We should have a better immigration system. We should have immigration reform. We should make it easier to have a path towards citizenship. I think we can all agree on that. And we should have humanitarian detention facilities. But these people, if they're coming here illegally, they can't stay forever. Refugees, like the Dalai Lama says, refugees eventually have to go back to their home country. And maybe we should help out their home country. Maybe we should give them aid. But the people of this country, they want to have a country. They need to have a country, you have to have a border. All right? And to have a welfare state that's successful and doesn't tip over, you need a strong border. It's just the way it is. I hate to be the bad guy, but you know what? It's easy to destroy things. It's harder to create and sustain them. All right? So these are the hard answers. These are the hard questions and the hard answers. I wish I could virtue signal. That's the easy way to get votes. Just say, well, we want to give people everything. We want to give free health care to everybody. We want to, save everybody. We want to take money from the rich and give it to the poor. Look, that all sounds great. Like, in principle, I like it. I like it. Let's do it. That's why I was for Bernie in the first place. I like it. But it's not sustainable. You'd have to destroy what we have now, which is already teetering because of the grand national debt and all the problems we have in the world, the war that could break out if we don't continue to do things the way we are. It's a good thing we're using economic sanctions instead of actually firing on people. We're actually working towards getting out of war. But I'm not virtue signaling right now. I kind of am. Someone would say, well, it's virtue signaling all the way down. You're signaling your virtue of not signaling your virtue. It's all just virtue signaling. It's like outrage culture. It's outrage all the way down. You're outraged over my outrage. You're outraged over my outrage. You're signaling your virtue about not being a virtue signaler. It's just, Listen. Slow down there, Tiger. I'm talking about how they're using their morality. We are moral. We allow free ice cream for all. You know, like, that's easy. That's easy. I could do that right now. Like I said, I could snap my fingers and everybody would get everything. That's called infinite abundance. You know, if we have an order, we have law, we have government for a reason. To maintain order. So it's the president's duty, it's Border Patrol's duty, it's ICE's duty to maintain our immigration system so it doesn't get overwhelmed like it is now because we don't have a strong border. We don't have a strong border wall that we're trying to build. But the same people that are saying children in cages and virtue signaling all day, and they will be through the election, so this is pretty pertinent, they'll keep on going and going and going on this and say that everybody that disagrees is a Nazi. Everybody that disagrees is a white nationalist or a black nationalist or whatever you might be. Like, I've actually seen white people punching Hispanic people and saying, you people are racist for wearing your MAGA hat. I think the person punching somebody else that's of a different race or ethnic background is the racist, my friend. But when you're in clown world, when postmodernism and absolutism and guilt by association, and as my friend Tyler says, guilt by conversation becomes a thing, yeah, you know, it's down is the new up. It's topsy-turvy town, as Tom York would say. So if you intimately acquaint yourself with these terms, you'll have an easier time finding your truth. And have fun voting. I definitely recommend it. Vote. Exercise your civic duty. And help strengthen our democracy.